King Sennacherib then, we'll finish that story, he goes all the way down through the coastal regions of Israel, he goes right down to the southwestern corner of Israel, and his plan then is to turn north. Once he has captured the corner city, he turns north, and it's only about a day's march to Jerusalem. But Jerusalem's the last on the list, because he knows he's basically got that in the bag. He expects Hezekiah to stand at the gates of Jerusalem with the keys, saying, I've packed everything up, take what you want, and, please don't tear me into pieces, which he's likely to do. So he's quite cool about everything that's going on. He goes down to the city of Lachish, and he conquers it, and captures it, and then he heads towards Jerusalem. When he has finished his campaign in Israel, he goes home, and he says to his people, we're going to immortalize, it's the same as the Egyptian thing, right? This carving immortalizes the success of the campaign. So he says to his people, we're going to immortalize the Israel campaign. Give me, in great detail, the siege of Lachish. And undoubtedly, there was the kind of silence that I've just been met with as I said that. Now, you're all Bible students, so I'm almost embarrassed to ask you this question because there's no doubt you'll know. How many times is the city of Lachish mentioned in the Bible? Mentioned 23 times. Fair enough. Now, never mind being Bible students. If you're a Christian, you'll be able to answer the next question. Okay? A proper Christian, you'll know the answer to the next question. How many times is the city of Jerusalem mentioned in the Bible? 800. What does that tell you about the relative importance of those two cities? Lachish is hardly important at all. It's there, and it's like it's a border city, it's like a trading post. It's mentioned 23 times in the entire biblical text. And this is the thing. When Sennacherib goes home, he says, give me the siege of Lachish. You think, why does he immortalize his whole Israel campaign in the capture and destruction of a city that no one in his kingdom will ever have heard of? And the secular historians, their minds blow at that thought because they know that something is seriously wrong here. This is how it works. Why would you do that? Well, let's think about the siege of Lachish first. So it is a border town. It's near Gaza. You can go to it these days, provided the tensions between Israel and Gaza are sort of relatively calm. Been to Lachish. I've scrambled up the mound that is the ancient city there, and it's an incredible place to be. Because you can get to the top of that mound, and then you can imagine as you look around on the plains all around, 300,000 of Sennacherib's troops. And what are they doing? They're cutting down your trees, they're killing your animals, they're cooking their food, they're living the life while you're up on the hill, because the siege is going to go on for months and you're going to starve to death, and you might even end up eating some of your friends, because that's how it worked. Sennacherib conducts the siege, and eventually the city is so weakened that he says, off you go, boys, So they build a siege ramp up to the city, 19,000 tons of soil and sand and rocks and rubble, and it's represented here. We see this sort of brick road thing. It looks very steep, but actually I was surprised when I got to, having done this tour a lot, I got to Lachish, it pretty much is that steep, and you have to scramble up it. But look at the top of the siege ramp. We're 700 years before Christ. What's at the top of the siege ramp? It's a tank, it's a siege engine. They've been building this. You've been looking over the walls every day for the last few months, watching them build these weapons of destruction and thinking of new ways to kill you. And so you've got this engine at the top with a battering ram that's battering away at the city walls, and of course it's made of wood. So what can you do? The city's not dead yet. What can the city do to stop these siege engines destroying their city? A wooden tank. Burn it. So if you look around, you see all these burning torches flying over the walls of the city to set light to this thing. But the Assyrians, I told you, are geniuses. They're already ahead of you on this. Look at this man here. You see him? Here's old guy, he's nearing retirement. He sits in the cab of the tank, he's got a little window to look out of, and he has in his hand a ladle. And he has a big vat of water, and all he does all day is he pours water over the tank, and it never catches fire. I mean, you have got to give it to these guys, they're pretty cool, really. And they utterly destroy the city. And here's where the artwork, the size of the artwork changes. It becomes big. Why? Because we won. And now you see the Assyrian soldiers, together with the Hebrews from the city, carrying out the goods, the plunder from the city. So here we are, here's our cloth-hatted Hebrew friend again, we saw in the other carving, and in lots of them actually. It's the standard Assyrian way of representing Hebrew people. And you've got an old guy here with his oxen, his cart, you've got a young girl there and her younger brother. He's naked and his ribs are showing through because he's been starving for ages up in the city there. And now they're now all working for the enemy. You have to. You either die or work for the enemy. That's how it works. Carrying the plunder. And then here, how do they keep control of this? Well, what the Assyrians do, if you're a little bit squeamish, just and you've got a happy place in your head that you can go to, just head there for a moment or two. You take some of the nobles, you strip them naked. You can tell they're nobles. Look at the hairdo there, that tells you everything. Strip them naked, and then you peel the skin off of the lower leg. And you put your hand between the leg muscles and grab hold of the two leg bones, and then you snap them. And if you look here, these Assyrian guys have got the bones of this man's legs in their hands. I mean, it's quite striking. The artwork's phenomenal. But why do they do that? Because this will produce extreme pain, lots of screaming. It will produce a lingering death, but enough to keep everybody else saying, we don't want anything to do with that. We're just going to carry the stuff and do what we're told. And that's how it works. Same here, Syrian guard, Hebrew noble. He's got a dagger going down into his shoulder. They know their anatomy too. They know that if you push a dagger into the shoulder blade complex, you sever major arteries and nerves. You cause paralysis, blood loss, screaming, and eventual death. Just long enough for all these other nobles to come and bow down before the king, who is sat on his throne here. But something's happened to him. What's happened to him? He's been defaced, right? Okay. Because contrary to what the Assyrians thought and Sennacherib thought, they didn't last forever. You know, as powerful and as brilliant as they were, they didn't last forever. And 100 years after this, the Babylonians come, take over the kingdom, and actually they quite like the artwork. You know, they're okay with that, but they're not going to let Sennacherib sit there for eternity and enjoy it. So if you take his face off, he ain't there anymore. The only thing is, I can tell you, the soldier that did that was illiterate. Why? Because in the panel of text up here, Sennacherib has his name. So he's still part of the story. Do you see how all this works? You know, he's gone. No, he isn't gone. He's still there, you know. But this is how everybody's thinking. But the crucial thing is this. This is all a massive distraction technique. Because back in the palace at
Could it read the language?
Yeah, absolutely. Whoever it was, the Babylonian that decided to do that. I mean, he might have been a commander. He might have been one of the military commanders. But the language is cuneiform, so they would have been familiar with that. But again, it just. Hello, somebody turned the lights on. The language would have been familiar to them, but I suspect the lower ranks of the military. I never thought of that before. The lower ranks of the military wouldn't read enough to be able to know that. So they think they're just doing the job by getting a pin. And they probably thought, what's all those triangles? You know, that's language. But the key thing is this, and everybody knows it, the secular historians, they know this full well. This is wrong. Which room should we be studying?
Jerusalem.
The Jerusalem room, right? Because where's the big place in Jerusalem? Even in a divided kingdom, north and south, the guy that sits on the throne in Jerusalem is the big guy. Jerusalem is the big city. Jerusalem's where the palace is and the temple is and all of that stuff. And the truth is, when Sennacherib went home, he had nothing. Nothing of that. I mean, who are these people? These Lachishian nobodies bending down in front of him forever. Does he want that? No, he doesn't. He wants King Hezekiah with a bronze hook through his jaw, having dragged him hundreds of miles back to the palace. He's going to hang him on the palace walls until the birds eat all his bits and pieces off. Everybody's going to go, what a great king we've got. But instead, if you go and visit him, he says, come and look at my Lachish carvings. And the reason is he can't have Jerusalem carvings because he never touched Jerusalem. And that is a fact of history. He never touched it. We know from Lachish he sent two-thirds of his army on ahead to prepare the siege. And then suddenly he says, I think I left the oven on back at home. He says, let's go home and let's sort out one or two things back there. And the people say, well, what about Jerusalem? Oh, don't worry about Jerusalem, that's fine, it'll be okay. Why does he do that? Well, the historians go crazy over this because there's only one place they can go to find out how this all ended. It's a written record, historical record in the Bible, 2 Kings chapter 19, towards the end of the chapter. It tells us why Sennacherib never touched Jerusalem. It says, during the night the angel of the Lord passed over the enemy camp, and in the morning 185,000, that's pretty much 2/3 of Sennacherib's army, lay dead and died. And everybody knows that's the fact, and he goes home with a much reduced army. He never goes near Jerusalem, he never comes back into Israel. He stays away completely. And if you go and visit him and say, how did you get on down in Israel? He'll say, look at my Lachish camp, my Lachish reliefs. And he won't talk to you about Jerusalem, because in Jerusalem he was humiliated. Now, the Bible also foreshortens things, as it often does historically. Isaiah, they're looking ahead and says, well, actually what happens is he is murdered by 2 of his sons, and a third son, Esarhaddon, is put in his place. That's 20 years later. But the truth is, Sennacherib was a ruined man after the Israel campaign. And humanly speaking, militarily speaking, logically speaking, there is no reason why he didn't finish the job. The only explanation you've got is the one that you find least, least palatable perhaps in the failure of the army to take.
So you say he lost 2/3 of his army?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.